Welcome to Phrasal Verb Practice. This is the place to learn real English, one phrasal verb at a time. My name is Marissa, and I'll walk you through this learning journey. Hello everyone. Trust you're all well. In today's session, we'll cover and practice the phrasal verb get into. All right, so let's go step by step and look at how we actually use get into in real life. First, we use get into when we talk about entering a place or a vehicle. So basically, going inside something. For example, I got into the car quickly because it started to rain. She got into the house and closed the door. They got into the elevator together. Now, another very common use of get into is when we start to like something or become interested in it. For example, I recently got into reading before bed. He got into fitness after his doctor's advice. She got into photography during college. We also use get into when someone is accepted into a school or a program. For example, she got into a great university. He got into the training program last year. They both got into the same college. And finally, we use get into when we talk about getting involved in a situation, especially a negative one. For example, he got into trouble at work. They got into an argument yesterday. She got into a difficult situation with a client. So, the main idea behind get into is moving into something. That could be a place, an activity, or even a situation. Now, just so you have a quick reference, in other languages, get into would be something like, in Spanish, entrar en or meterse en, or even interesarse en. In French, entrer dans or s'intéresser à. In Portuguese, entrar em or se interessar por. In Italian, entrare in or interessarsi a. In German, hineingehen or sich für etwas interessieren. In Japanese, hairu or myuchu ni naru. And in Chinese, jingru or 对产生兴趣. Now, when do people usually use get into? Well, we use get into when we talk about entering something physically, like a car or a room. We also use it when we start a new hobby or interest, when someone is accepted into a school or program, and when someone gets involved in a situation, especially if it's a problem. Let me give you a few quick examples to bring it all together. I got into the taxi and gave the driver the address. She got into yoga during the pandemic. He got into one of the best universities in the country. They got into trouble for missing the deadline. I don't want to get into an argument right now. Now, let's talk a little bit about the grammar. Get into is inseparable. So we always keep get and into together. We can also use pronouns. Get into it. Get into them. And here's the key point. We don't separate it. So we don't say things like get the car into when we mean entering the car. The structure is simple. Get into plus object. You always need an object after into. Correct. Get into the car. Correct. Get into music. All right, now let's practice. First, you're going to hear a short, everyday situation. Then, you'll hear a workplace or professional example. Are you ready? Let's start. Yesterday started like any normal day. I woke up a little late, so I rushed to get ready and quickly got into my clothes without thinking too much about what I was wearing. I grabbed my bag, ran outside, and got into my car just as it started to drizzle. On my way to work, I realized I had been trying to get into a new podcast lately, so I played an episode while driving. At first, I wasn't sure about it, but little by little, I started to get into it. By the time I arrived, I was actually enjoying it. When I got into the office, my coworkers were already there. One of them told me she had just got into a really good cooking class and she couldn't stop talking about it. It made me think that maybe I should try to get into something new too, like cooking or even painting. Later that day, things got a bit stressful. Two colleagues started arguing, and somehow I got into the middle of it without even realizing. I tried to stay calm and help, but I didn't really want to get into that situation. After work, I met a friend for coffee. She was so happy because she had just got into a university program she had been dreaming about for years. You could see how proud she felt. When I got home, I got into my apartment, changed into comfortable clothes, and sat on the couch. I picked up a book I hadn't touched in months and decided to try to get into reading again. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like a good way to end the day. Great, that was the first text. How many times did you hear the phrasal verb of the day? Now, let's move on to the second text. I got to the office early because I wanted a quiet moment before the day started. As soon as I got into the building, I checked my calendar and saw that we had a big client meeting later. I grabbed a coffee, got into the elevator, and started thinking about the presentation. Over the past few weeks, I had really started to get into this project. At first, it was just another assignment, but little by little, I began to get into the details and actually enjoy the process. I had even encouraged my team to get into the data more deeply so we could find better insights. When I got into the meeting room, my manager was already there reviewing some notes. He mentioned that we needed to be careful not to get into any confusion with the client about timelines. We all agreed to keep things clear and simple. The meeting started, and everything was going well until one of the clients asked a tricky question. For a moment, I felt like we might get into a difficult situation, but we stayed calm and explained our approach step by step. After the meeting, my manager told me he was glad I didn't get into unnecessary technical details. He said that sometimes it's easy to get into over-explaining, especially when you care about your work. Later that afternoon, I received an email from HR. I had applied for an internal training program a few weeks ago, and I had just got into it. I couldn't believe it. It felt like a great opportunity to grow. Before leaving, I got into one last call with my team to plan the next steps. It had been a long day, but also a really good one. Great, that was the second text, and that's all for today. Thank you so much for following this channel, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.